I was at my limit, mentally exhausted, emotionally broken. I had already filled out the papers for a transfer, or leave, or whatever would get me off the streets, out of the uniform, away from the war my city had become. One more shift, I told myself. Just one more. And it was on that shift that everything changed. It was supposed to be a routine call, a trespassing complaint, some noise, possible domestic disturbance. But when I stepped into that house, time stopped. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, and there in the corner, trembling, crouched behind a torn-up sofa, was a little girl, eyes wide with fear, clutching a doll like it was the only safe thing left in the world. She looked at me like I was a hero, but I felt like anything but. In that moment, in that suffocating silence, I knew that child needed me, and I needed her. What I didn't know was that this encounter wouldn't just save her life, it would save mine, because in that instant, with the world collapsing around me, she reminded me why I ever put on this badge. But the night was far from over, and what I would discover in that house's basement would make me question everything I believed, and would force me to fight harder than ever before. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 12 I've worn this blue uniform that's seen more blood, sweat, and tears than any human should ever endure. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. Tough neighborhood. The kind of place where you learn early on that the world doesn't hand you anything, and that the law often feels more like a rumor than a reality. My father was a mechanic, honest, hardworking, but never had time for me. My mother, she left too soon. Overdose. I was 9 years old when I watched paramedics carry her body out under a white sheet, the smell of alcohol and pills mixed in the air. It stuck in my mind like a wound that never heals. I grew up angry at the system, at the world, at everything. I was lucky I didn't go down the wrong path. Lucky to meet Sergeant Willis, an old neighbor, a Vietnam vet who saw something in me that I couldn't. Potential. He taught me discipline, respect, and told me stories. Stories of ordinary men facing chaos, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. That's when I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite it. I joined the police force because I thought I could make a difference. I thought I'd be that cop the kids smile at on the street, the one mothers silently thank with a glance because he makes them feel safe. I wanted to be useful, part of the solution, but reality hit hard. The streets aren't fair. Pain doesn't take sides. I've seen innocents die in my arms. I've had to deliver the news to parents who lost their children. I've carried bodies too small for black bags, and every one of those moments took a piece of me. As the years passed, I changed. Hope turned into exhaustion, empathy into armor, not because I stopped caring, but because I cared too much. And when you care too much in this job, you break. I started losing sleep, nightmares, images flashing every time I closed my eyes, the sound of gunfire, screams, the radio exploding in my ear. It all blended together. And the question that haunted me, is it still worth it? My personal life? A disaster. I was married, twice. The first couldn't handle my absence. The second couldn't handle my presence. I wasn't the same man anymore, cold, hard, empty. And when you get to that point, nothing makes sense. I watched my colleagues fall one by one, some to the streets, others to the weight they carried. The bottle became a friend to some, a gun in the mouth, a friend to others. And me? I was at the edge. Every time I put on the uniform, it felt heavier. Every time I holstered my weapon, I wondered if I was shackling myself to a life that no longer belonged to me. I didn't know if I still believed in justice. I didn't know if I still believed in me. That's when I started thinking about quitting, leaving it all, maybe moving to another state, opening a small shop, fishing, breathing, becoming someone ordinary. Because this badge, which once gave me purpose, now felt like it was choking me. And right at that breaking point, that exact moment, the call came in, and that little girl, that fragile life in the middle of chaos, looked at me like I was still someone worth believing in, like I was her last hope. And that's when everything changed. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night where everything seems to slow down. The radio stays quiet for long stretches. The city feels like it's holding its breath before chaos returns. I was near the end of my shift, already counting the seconds until I could hand in my weapon, head home, maybe grab a terrible coffee at the corner gas station, maybe just drive aimlessly, listening to old songs, trying to quiet my mind. Just another night, or so I thought. At 10:17 p.m., the radio crackled to life. Unit 314, possible home invasion in progress. Sounds of disturbance and child crying reported. Address 1452 Ashbury Street, East Side. My heart sank. Ashbury Street. I knew that block. Run-down houses. Forgotten neighborhood. The kind of place where the law is just a word and no one opens the door when a cop knocks. Dangerous ground. But it wasn't the location that hit me. It was the word child. I grabbed the mic. Unit 314 en route. ETA 5 minutes. 5 minutes that felt like 20. The radio went dead again, like even it was holding its breath. I floored the gas. Lights flashing. Sirens off. No need to warn them. Not tonight. Not when a kid might be in danger. I reached Ashbury Street and parked in front of 1452. The house was a nightmare. Peeling paint. Windows boarded up. Overgrown yard like it wanted to swallow the place whole. But there were signs. Fresh footprints in the mud. A small bicycle tossed to the side. One wheel. Still spinning lazily. And the strangest detail. A faint light flickering inside. Like from a candle or flashlight. I radioed for backup. Possible high-risk situation. Entering to assess. Protocol says wait for support, but I knew. Every second could be the last for someone inside. I drew my weapon, flashlight in the other hand. The doorknob hung loose, barely attached, and beyond it, I could hear it, crying, muffled, weak. I remembered every unresolved case I'd ever worked, every child I'd reached too late, every tiny face that haunted my sleep. And I swore, right there on that rotting porch, that this time would be different. I kicked the door open. Darkness swallowed me for a moment, only the beam of my flashlight cutting through the dust-filled air. The smell hit me. Mold, filth, and something else. Something metallic and sharp. Blood. I moved silently, each step echoing like a gunshot. Then I heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Quick, panicked, a door slamming shut. And that, crying, louder now. Desperate. Someone was in there, and they weren't alone. My instincts screamed. Something was wrong. This wasn't just a break-in. It was deeper, dirtier. It felt like the house had swallowed that child whole and was daring me to come see how far I'd go. And I went, not knowing that this call would be the breaking point between the man I was and the man I'd have to become. Because inside that house, I wouldn't just find danger. I'd find a mirror, and the reflection would haunt me forever. The street was deserted, swallowed by a thick darkness that seemed to devour even the flashing lights of my patrol car. The houses around me were nothing more than warped shadows, windows shuttered, curtains tightly drawn, like the entire neighborhood wanted to disappear to pretend it didn't know what was happening inside that house. I killed the sirens before I turned onto the block. This wasn't the kind of night for attention. It was the kind for silence, for caution, for feeling the weight in the air and listening closely for whatever the quiet was trying to hide. 1452, Ashbury Street. I'd been here before, months ago, an overdose on the porch next door. No one had called for help until the body stopped moving. No one cared. Not around here. It was a place where hope had packed up and left years ago, where people didn't scream for help, and if they did, it was already too late. I parked half a block away, cut the engine, and stepped out into the cold. The kind, of cold that seeps through your skin and into your bones. My boots slipped slightly on the cracked sidewalk, slick with moisture and rot. Every sound was amplified. The creak of the pavement, the distant barking of a dog, the steady thump of my heart in my ears. Then I heard it, faint, but there, the muffled sobbing of a child, drifting out from inside the house. Up close, the place looked abandoned, but it wasn't. The front door was ajar, hanging on broken hinges. The windows were all boarded up, but behind one of them, I caught a flicker of light. Not electric, flickering, a candle, or maybe a flashlight. And then I noticed the details. A gate off its hinges, discarded like trash. A broken doll stroller lying in the overgrown yard. One wheel snapped. Small footprints in the mud leading from the sidewalk to the door, child-sized. But there were others, heavier, dragging, going in and out. My pulse raced. I'd seen this before. Safe houses, holding places, for drugs, for victims. And the victims were always the same, always children. I drew my weapon, flashlight in my other hand. My breath came slow and steady. I moved forward. The porch creaked under my weight like it hadn't felt footsteps in years. The stench grew stronger. Mold, sweat, something foul and sharp, blood, urine, fear. Inside, it was worse. The air was heavy, choking. The flashlight swept across chaos, overturned furniture, trash everywhere, torn papers, filth. In one corner, a stained mattress, a headless doll lying atop it. Then, noise upstairs, rapid footsteps, a door slamming, and that sobbing, louder, panicked. I shouted, "Police, show your hands." Silence. Then the sound of frantic movement behind a closed door. I climbed the stairs, slow and deliberate, every nerve screaming. At the end of the hallway, the last door glowed faintly underneath, flickering yellow light spilling from beneath it. I reached for the doorknob. It was cold. My hand shook, and in that instant, I hesitated, because I knew, once I opened that door, everything would change. Whatever was waiting for me on the other side would become part of me, forever. Then I heard a voice, weak, trembling. "Please, help." A child's voice. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I kicked the door open, the wood crashing against the wall, and what I saw made me stop cold. The little girl was there, eyes wide with terror, curled in the corner, but she wasn't alone. A man, filthy, sweating, eyes vacant, stood above her, something metal in his hand. He turned to face me, and I realized I had only seconds to act, because that night was about to explode, and I was the only thing standing between that child and the end. Time slowed to a crawl. I don't know if it was seconds or centuries, but everything around me went silent, except for the pounding of my own heart, like a drum inside my chest. The beam of my flashlight hit the man's face, filthy, twisted, unshaven, eyes bloodshot and burning with something wild. He wasn't just a threat, he was broken, hollow, and in his hand, clutched tight, was a rusted metal wrench, raised high, ready to strike. The little girl was crying softly, trying to make herself disappear into the corner. Her whole body trembled, and for a brief second she looked up at me, her eyes locked on mine, full of terror and trust. I shouted, "Drop it now! Drop the weapon and step away from the girl." The man didn't move. He stared at me, breathing hard like an animal about to charge. Sweat ran down his face, and he took a step forward. My finger was on the trigger. I could shoot. I should shoot, but something froze me. Her eyes, that girl's eyes, begging me not to let her down. Then he screamed, a raw, primal scream of rage and pain and madness, and he lunged toward me, the wrench high in the air. I fired. One shot, clean, into his leg. He collapsed with a scream, dropping the weapon, writhing on the floor, clutching his knee. "Police! Hands on your head, now!" I shouted, moving quickly, kicking the wrench out of reach. He didn't resist, just sobbed, cursed, twisted on the ground. The girl didn't move. She was frozen, wide-eyed, staring at me like I was the only solid thing left in her shattered world. I stepped toward her, speaking softly. "It's okay now. I'm here. You're safe." She didn't answer, just raised her arms, wanting to be held. I dropped my gun and flashlight on the floor and picked her up. She was light, too light, and ice cold. I could feel her heart pounding against my chest as she clung to me, not saying a word. The man groaned behind me, muttering nonsense. I called for backup over the radio, my voice shaking. "Suspect down, child secured, requesting ambulance ASAP." I carried her down the stairs, every step like walking through mud. The air in that house felt poisonous. As I neared the door, I noticed how eerily quiet it was outside. No neighbors, no lights, no movement, just the cold, night waiting. My patrol car's light still flashed, painting the darkness red and blue. I placed the girl in the back seat, wrapped her in my jacket, and cranked the heater. I grabbed a water bottle from the console, tried to get her to drink. She refused. She just held my hand. Backup arrived minutes later. 2 cars, paramedics, child services. The suspect was taken away, still moaning, blood trailing behind. But what I remember most was the girl's face as they came to take her. She wouldn't let go of my hand. I knelt beside her. "You're safe now. They're going to take care of you." She shook her head, eyes full of tears. Then she whispered, "You came back. I asked God to send someone, and you came." I couldn't speak. That wrecked me. Just a child, lost in hell, who believed someone would come. Before they drove away, she hugged me tight and whispered again, "Thank you, Starman." My badge. That's what she saw. I stood there on the cold asphalt, watching the car disappear into the night, sirens fading. And I realized, in the middle of all the noise, the blood, the chaos, saving her made me feel alive again. But I didn't know then The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. The relief was brief, fleeting. It lasted only as long as the ambulance's taillights before they vanished at the end of the street, taking the little girl with them, safe, wrapped in a thermal blanket, her eyes still searching for me through the window. I stood there, hand resting on the hood of my patrol car, trying to slow my breathing. But something was wrong, deeply wrong. A feeling, sharp, heavy, that nothing about this was over. It wasn't just instinct, it was experience. No call ever ends clean, never this clean. I went back into the house, each step heavier than the last. The smell was stronger now, metallic, rancid, mixing with the blood trail from the suspect and the rot embedded in the walls. I moved through the kitchen, the living room, all wrecked. This wasn't just a squat. It was a prison. Chains on the floor, a dirty bowl of rotting food, a blanket tossed on a stained rug. Everything about the place screamed desperation. Then I saw it. A door I hadn't noticed before, tucked in the hallway, slightly ajar. The basement. I gripped my flashlight tighter, weapon still drawn, and crept toward it. From below, a noise, faint, muffled, like something scraping, or footsteps. I descended the stairs, each one creaking under my boots like the house was warning me to stop. The basement was dark, low-ceilinged, with dirt floors and makeshift walls covered in filthy blankets. The air was damp and cold, thick with decay. Then the light caught it, a metal door, half shut, a cut lock hanging from the latch. I approached slowly. The noise was louder now, breathing, movement. I pushed the door open and froze. Inside was a small room. On the floor, 3 makeshift beds, stained mattresses, the walls, clawed, scratched, small handprints in the dirt. On the sheets, tiny fingerprints left behind by terrified children. In the middle of the room, a large suitcase open. Inside, papers, photos. I dropped to my knees. Polaroids, dozens, faces of children, some old, some recent. Dates scrawled on the back, names, ages. One name repeated, Emily, the girl I rescued. Then I found a worn folder. Inside, forged documents, notes, maps, several houses marked in red, names of streets I knew, neighborhoods I'd patrolled, and a list, multiple lists, names of missing children from the last 3 years. Some names crossed out, others circled. I couldn't breathe. And there it was, Emma Carter, age 7, my niece. I collapsed to the floor, heart racing, the list trembling in my hands. Emma, my sister's daughter, missing for 6 months, no leads, no clues, until now. And her name wasn't crossed out. It was circled. That meant she might still be alive. The room spun around me. My thoughts spiraled. Had she been here? In this room? Held in this filth? The images slammed into me like a freight train. Her face, her voice, the videos my sister used to send. Uncle Mike, when I grow up, I want to be a cop just like you. And I was too late. Again. But maybe not. I ran up the stairs, my legs weak, rage boiling in my chest. I called in for urgent backup. Possible child trafficking operation. Multiple victims. Request full tactical response. Now. Outside, the flashing lights of backup units filled the street. But they meant nothing. Not now. This wasn't just about one rescued girl. This was a network. And it wasn't over. Because that list held more names. Names I recognized. Names I'd seen on missing posters. And one name that brought me to my knees. Emma Carter. This wasn't just a call anymore. It was personal. And I wouldn't stop. Not now. Not ever. The world collapsed in silence. I was on my knees on that filthy basement floor. The list crumpled in my trembling hands. My eyes fixed on one name. Emma Carter, age 7, my niece, my sister's only daughter, 6 months missing, gone without a trace. And now, there she was, her name scribbled on a dirty, blood-stained piece of paper, surrounded by dozens of others, names of children who vanished, names no one had found. Yet, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mind spiraled. I remembered the night she disappeared. My sister's voice on the phone, raw, panicked. Mike, she didn't come home. Emma didn't come home. I was on duty that night. Dropped everything. I searched every alley, every abandoned lot, knocked on every door. We combed the streets for weeks and nothing, no evidence, no witnesses, just emptiness. Now suddenly there it was. Proof. Cold, brutal, undeniable. She had been taken. And maybe she was still alive. The air felt thick like cement. I could barely move. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. My hands, they were shaking uncontrollably. Rage surged through me like fire in my veins. I wanted to scream, to smash everything in that room, to go back and finish what I started with that bastard I arrested. But it wasn't just anger. It was guilt, crushing, soul-breaking guilt. Because I failed her. All this time I wore this badge telling myself I was out there protecting the innocent, and I couldn't even protect my own family. How many times had I been close to finding her and didn't see the signs? How many times had I looked at missing persons reports and skipped over her name, too numb to let it in? And how many other kids had I failed? I remembered every child I'd ever seen lying in the morgue, every empty bed I'd stood beside, telling parents, we're doing everything we can. But we weren't. I wasn't. I let the system blind me. Paperwork, procedures, politics, all while monsters like the ones who used this house walked free, hidden in plain sight. My mind screamed at me, you can't save her. You never could. But then, her face flashed in my mind. Emma, laughing, holding my hand at the park, drawing pictures of me in uniform, calling me her hero. Hero. I didn't feel like one. I felt hollow, broken, lost. But then I remembered the little girl I rescued, her arms around me, the way she looked at me like I was her whole world in that moment. She believed in me. Despite everything, she believed. And maybe, just maybe, Emma still did too. I stood, legs unsteady, body heavy like I'd aged 100 years in minutes. I looked around that hellhole, the clawed walls, the bloodstains, the fear soaked into the floor. This was what I was fighting. This was what I had to destroy. And that's when the storm inside me settled. The fear, the guilt, the rage, it all crystallized into something sharp, focused, purpose. I couldn't undo the past, couldn't erase my failures, but I could fight now. For Emma, for every child still waiting to be found, for every name on that list. I wasn't just wearing the badge anymore. I was the badge, the law, the reckoning, and I would burn this entire operation to the ground to find her, no matter what it cost me. I climbed those basement stairs like a man possessed, every step pounding like a war drum in my chest. The list was clenched in my fist, damp with sweat, Emma's name seared into my mind like a brand. Outside, the sky was starting to pale, that eerie hour before dawn when the world feels suspended between darkness and light, like even the sun doesn't know if it should rise. I stepped out onto the porch, the cold air, slapping my face, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't. My thoughts were locked in a loop. Emma, alive? Had she been there? In that basement? Had she cried out for help, waiting for someone? For me? To come? I tried to focus, to breathe, but every breath was shallow, every second a scream in my head. I needed answers. Now, I stormed over to the patrol car where the suspect sat cuffed in the back seat, eyes glazed, blood soaking through his pants from the gunshot. He looked up at me and smiled. A crooked, sick grin like he knew, like he enjoyed knowing. I yanked open the door and got in beside him. My voice was ice. You're going to tell me everything. Now. He chuckled, weak but smug. You don't get it, cop. It's bigger than me, bigger than you. They'll bury this, and you with it. I leaned in close, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma Carter, 7 years old. You know where she is? His smile faded for a split second. His eyes twitched, and in that flicker, I saw fear. You don't want to go down this road, he muttered. You think you're the first? You think you're the only one looking for someone? There's a place, out in the woods off Route 19. They call it the farm. It's where the shipments go before they're moved. You go there, you'll die. I grabbed his shirt, dragged him closer. If she's alive, I'll find her. And if you're lying, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. I stepped out, slamming the door behind me. The wind bit at my skin, but my blood was boiling. And there it was, the crossroads. I could call it in, follow procedure, wait for warrants, briefings, backup, let the system handle it. The same system that failed Emma, that failed me. Or I could go now, alone, no badge, no backup, just me, and the truth. I stood in the middle of that street watching the sky turn gray and made my choice. I pulled out my phone, called my sergeant. He picked up on the first ring. I need leave. Now. Personal reasons. He paused. Mike, whatever you're thinking, just sign it. I'm out. I hung up. Back in my car, I stared at my badge lying on the dashboard. That little piece of metal that used to mean something, used to be something. And maybe it still was. Just not in the way they wanted. This wasn't about policies or chains of command anymore. This was about Emma, and the hell I was about to walk into didn't need a badge. It needed me. All in. No turning back. I started the engine and drove toward Route 19, toward whatever waited for me, at the farm, toward the end, or the beginning, because sometimes justice isn't given. Sometimes it's taken. The choice I made on that street didn't take long to come with consequences. The moment I turned my back on the crime scene, on my badge, and disappeared into the shadows of the early morning, I left something behind, not just my uniform, but the shield that had always stood between me and the fire, the law, the rules, the system. I had stepped outside of all of it, and now I was alone. I returned to the station at sunrise, eyes bloodshot, body running on fumes. My mind was sharp, but my soul felt like it had been dragged through glass. I turned in my incomplete report, avoided eye contact, and kept my mouth shut. But as soon as I walked into Sergeant Davis's office, I knew the walls were closing in. He stood there, arms crossed, gaze cold, not angry, but wary, like a man who's seen too many others go over the edge. "Sit down, Mike," he said. His voice had weight. Sat, tension thick in the air. "Your report's a mess. Witnesses weren't interviewed, evidence not cataloged, and you vanished for nearly 2 hours. Talk to me." I tried to offer something. Stress, adrenaline, confusion, but he didn't buy it. "Cut the crap. I've seen that look before. You crossed the line. I'm giving you 2 options. Talk now, or I pull your badge for unfit duty." Silence. My heart thundered. He didn't know about Emma. Not yet, but he knew something had broken in me. I looked him in the eyes and spoke. "I need time. Leave of absence. Personal." He stared at me for a long beat, then nodded slowly. 7 days. No more. "And if you do anything stupid, Mike, I can't protect you." I walked out with 7 days. 7 days to find the truth. 7 days to chase ghosts through hell. The first wall I hit, Human Trafficking Division. They took over the case the moment forensics confirmed the evidence from the basement. I tried to access the files. Denied. Sensitive case. Federal jurisdiction sealed. I was shut out. But I couldn't wait. I wouldn't wait. I called in favors, reached out to old contacts, managed to get an unofficial copy of the basement photos. I pored over every detail. Scratch marks, objects, backgrounds. Then I saw it. In one of the photos behind a stained mattress was a torn calendar, a date circled in red, October 23rd, 3 days away, and one word scrawled beneath it, delivery. That hit me like a bullet. Delivery. Whatever network these monsters were running, something was about to happen, and Emma could be part of it. I dove deeper, but then the pressure started, subtle at first. A fellow officer messaged me. "You all right?" Another asked. "Need anything?" I ignored them. Couldn't drag anyone into this. Then my sister called. Her voice cracked. "Mike, did you find something? About Emma?" I froze. My throat closed. "Mike, if there's anything, please, tell me." I couldn't speak. I couldn't lie. I whispered, "I'm working on it. I'll find her. I swear." I hung up before she could respond. I couldn't bear her hope. Not yet. The walls kept closing in. My supervisor called me in for a mandatory psychological evaluation. Their way of saying they knew I was off the rails. And the worst part, someone followed me. A man. Unmarked car. Black van. No plates. I saw him in a store window reflection. When I turned, he was gone. Message received. They knew I was getting too close. And if I kept digging, they'd stop me. One way or another. But it was too late. I had the date. I had a possible location. I had 7 days. And the fires of hell waiting on the other side. Let them come. I was ready. 3 days had passed since that night on Ashbury Street. 3 days where I barely ate, barely slept. I was running on caffeine, headaches, and sheer obsession. Everyone on the streets looked suspicious. Every car that lingered too long behind mine felt like a threat. Every call I got with no voice on the other end felt like a warning. Still, I kept pushing, digging through old records, connecting dots between missing kids, abandoned houses, fake companies. That's how I found Raymond Doyle, ex-cop, dishonorably discharged 5 years ago for corruption and suspected ties to human trafficking. Never charged, no evidence, just another ghost. But I traced him to a derelict property on the city's outskirts. And more than that, There were records showing visits to the same house where I rescued the girl. No coincidences. Not in this world. I had to find him. It was a risk. Hell, it could have been a trap. But I was out of time and out of options. I found him in a seedy bar downtown. The kind of place that smells like smoke, regret, and old blood. He was in the back, alone, hunched over a glass. He looked older, worn out, but the moment he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition and resignation. I sat down across from him without asking. He looked up and gave a crooked smile. "Carter, thought you'd make it further before breaking like the rest." I didn't waste time. "Where is she? Where's Emma? Talk." He sipped his drink, unfazed. "Still think you're gonna save the world? You've no idea how deep it goes." I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Chairs scraped, a few heads turned, but no one intervened. In that bar, violence was just part of the wallpaper. "Where are the kids?" I growled. "Where is Emma?" For a second, something in his eyes shifted. Fear, guilt, maybe both. He swallowed hard. "You don't want this, Mike," he whispered. "You go after them, they'll come for you. They've buried better men. Try me." He took a shaky breath, then said, "There's a place, out by Route 19. They call it the farm. Remote, isolated. They hold the kids there before shipping them out. If Emma's alive, that's where she'll be. But if you go there, you won't come back." I stared at him, searching for a lie, a trick, but he was telling the truth, or at least enough of it. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He looked down. "I had a daughter, gone now. I worked for them, thought I could keep her safe. I was wrong, never saw her again. You have a chance." I didn't. I walked out, heart pounding, rage boiling. I had a location, a possible window. I had a chance. I sat in my car, staring at my badge on the dashboard. That piece of metal used to mean law, order, hope. Now it felt like a relic. Emma wasn't going to be saved by a badge. She needed me, and only me. I didn't call for backup, didn't notify command. This wasn't their fight anymore. It was mine, and hell was waiting on Route 19. But I was going in, badge or no badge, and God help anyone who tried to stop me. I drove down that deserted road with the trees looming overhead, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like they were trying to block out the sun. It felt like the world was holding its breath, like something knew what I was about to do, and it didn't want me to make it. There, but I kept driving. The list with Emma's name was folded in my pocket, burning like a hot coal against my chest. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight they ached, but I couldn't let go. Not now. The fear was gone. I wasn't afraid. Not of dying, not of what I might find. What I felt was something else, a kind of clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in doubt or fatigue. I knew exactly why I was here. That night on Ashbury Street had changed me. The man who walked into that house, who held that little girl in his arms, and he died there. He'd been buried under years of pain, failure, guilt. I'd spent too long pretending that the uniform, the badge, the rules meant I was doing enough, that just showing up was enough. But it wasn't. It never was. Now I wasn't running from the job, from the weight of it all. I was running toward something, toward Emma, toward the fight, because that's what this was, a war. And in war you don't wait for orders when lives are on the line. Memories flooded me as the trees blurred past. My first day at the academy, shaking my father's hand in my uniform, hearing him say, "Make me proud." I thought I was doing that, thought the badge would make me strong. But nothing made me feel weaker than failing to protect the ones I love. Emma's laughter echoed in my mind, her small voice calling me Uncle Mike, her drawings of me as a hero. I wondered if she still believed that, if she was still waiting for someone to come for me. And then I thought about the little girl I rescued, her arms wrapped around me, her whisper, "You came back, you came for me." That look in her eyes, like I was the only thing holding her to this world. That's when I understood something I'd forgotten. This badge wasn't just a symbol. It wasn't just authority or power. It was a promise, a vow I took the day I put it on, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And sometimes to keep that promise, you have to step outside the lines. You have to fight the way no one else will. I wasn't the same man who considered quitting. That man was lost, broken. But this man had purpose, fire. And I was ready to burn everything down if it meant bringing Emma home. The road ended in a dirt path, barely wide enough for a car. No signs, no lights, just darkness. And at the end of that path, I knew I'd find it, the farm. the place where innocence went to die. I stopped the car, engine idling. The sky was turning gray, the first light of morning creeping in. I stepped out, the cold air hitting me like a slap. I looked at the horizon and knew this was it, the line. Beyond it, I didn't know what waited, but I knew who I was now. Michael Carter, cop, uncle, protector, and that place was about to meet the storm I had become. I wasn't just bringing justice. I was justice, and nothing was going to stop me. Not tonight, not ever. The house appeared on the horizon like a forgotten ghost, weather-beaten, half-collapsed, surrounded by twisted trees and overgrown weeds that looked like they were trying to bury it. The roof sagged, the paint was long gone, and the entire structure leaned as if it was too tired to stand. It wasn't just abandoned, it was erased. A place no one would come looking for. A place where people vanished without a trace. I parked about 300 yards away behind a small hill and approached on foot. Every step through that muddy ground felt heavier, like the earth itself didn't want me there. But I kept going. Something in that house was calling me, and I knew what it was. I moved through the trees in silence. There were 3 vehicles parked near the house. Black, unmarked, tinted windows. No plates. Professional. I crouched low and scanned the area. I could hear voices, laughter, relaxed, like they weren't expecting anything, like they thought they were safe. I circled to the back and found a broken window, just enough space to look in. Inside, 2 men sat at a table playing cards, weapons hanging from their belts. A third man leaned against the doorframe smoking, but what froze my blood was the light coming from below, from the basement. Through a small gap in the floorboards, I saw them, 2 children, huddled together, wrapped in filthy blankets. One of them, blonde hair, tied in 2 small ponytails, her face buried in her knees. Emma, my niece, alive. Time stopped. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. She was there, right there. I had no choice, no time. I couldn't wait for backup, couldn't risk them moving her. I had to go in alone. I tightened my grip on the weapon, took one last breath and moved. I kicked the back door open with everything I had. The wood splintered and flew off the hinges. "Police, drop your weapons!" The 2 at the table jumped to their feet. One reached for his gun. I fired. 1 shot, straight through the shoulder. He dropped, screaming. The second man flipped the table and ran toward the hallway. Another man appeared, shotgun in hand. I didn't hesitate. 2 shots. One hit his arm, the other his chest. He collapsed in the doorway. I ran for the basement stairs, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The children screamed. I shouted, "Emma, it's me, Uncle Mike." She looked up, her face pale, eyes wide. "Uncle Mike?" I grabbed both kids, scooped them up, Emma in one arm, the boy in the other. They were light as feathers, shaking, holding on to me like I was the only real thing in the world. "We're getting out of here," I said. I ran, up the stairs, through the blood and smoke, back out into the cold air. My breath came in gasps, every step fueled by pure instinct. I loaded the kids into one of the black SUVs, hot-wired it, and hit the gas. We tore through that dirt road, the house shrinking behind us in the rearview mirror. Sirens blared in the distance. I'd called in backup while driving, voice hoarse, barely able to speak. "Emma's alive. I have her. We need medics. Now." At the hospital, they took the kids. Emma clung to me, refusing to let go until the nurses promised I'd be right behind her. She was safe, tired, scared, but safe. My sister arrived moments later. When she saw Emma, she broke, fell to her knees, sobbing. Emma ran into her arms. The 2 of them collapsed in that hospital hallway, holding each other like they'd never let go again. I stood off to the side, leaning against the wall, trying to breathe. I'd done it. I'd brought her home. And for the first time in years, I felt alive, but I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning, because there were more names on that list. And I wasn't stopping now. Not ever. The sun rose slowly on the horizon, casting a dull orange glow over the city, like the sky itself was tired. Tired of darkness, tired of silence. I sat on the curb outside the hospital, my jacket draped over my shoulders, my uniform still stained with dried blood, dirt, and sweat. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Beside me, my sister sat holding Emma in her arms, my niece, safe, alive, breathing. She slept, curled against her mother, clinging to her like an anchor in the storm. I couldn't stop looking at her, at the rise and fall of her chest, at the peaceful look on her face, something I feared I'd never see again. The doctor said she would have scars, inside and out, that it would take time, maybe a lifetime, but she was alive. And that was everything. For hours I sat there in silence watching people come and go. Nurses, officers, reporters. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the fact that she was here, and I was here, and somehow I hadn't lost her. Something changed in me that night. I felt it in every breath, every heartbeat. The weight I had carried for so long, the guilt, the doubt, the numbness, it didn't vanish, but it shifted. I wasn't just a man in uniform anymore. I wasn't a broken cop walking through life on autopilot. I was something else, something new. In the days that followed, they called me a hero, said I saved her, saved others, that I was brave, fearless. But none of that felt true. I wasn't fearless. I was terrified, not of dying, but of failing, of losing her, of not getting there in time. The truth is, I didn't save Emma. She saved me. In that basement, holding her tiny frame, feeling her heart pound against mine, I remembered why I joined the force, why I swore an oath, why I chose this path with all its pain, its chaos, its weight. Not for glory, not for badges, but for people like her. Since then, I've changed. I left patrol. I now work in investigations, full-time, chasing the shadows that tried to steal Emma, the ones still out there. We've uncovered more names, more places, more victims, and I won't stop, not until the list is empty. Emma visits me every Sunday. Sometimes we fish, sometimes we just sit in silence. She still calls me Uncle Mike. Sometimes she still has nightmares, but she always says the same thing before she leaves. You're my hero. I don't always feel like I deserve that, but I wear it like armor. Because this isn't just about Emma anymore. It's about every kid still waiting to be found, every name still written in red, and if I can bring one more child home, just one more, it'll be worth it. I thought about quitting once, thought about walking away from the badge, from the fight, but that little girl, that look in her eyes, reminded me why I took this job. To protect, to serve, to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And I'll keep fighting, as long as it takes, because the job's not over, and neither am I. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here, every story is real, raw, and human. Stories that remind us what really matters. I'll see you on the next call. Stay safe, and never stop fighting for what's right.